Welcome, Mr. Standish. We really appreciate you taking your time out of your day to offer us your expertise on entrepreneurship. And I guess we can start off by just telling us a little bit about yourself and your career.
Thank you, Ria. I started life in banking. So many years ago, I joined Barclays Bank, which is a global organization headquartered in London. And I trained with them and qualified with them and spent the next sort of 20 years or more working in corporate banking, specializing in the end in helping companies with acquisition finance and providing finance for things like management buyouts and acquisitions. During the mid-2000s, I was headhunted by a global accountancy firm, and I joined them as a corporate finance partner in 2005. And I worked mainly pan-European, but also quite a lot of transatlantic transactions. And I worked with them for about 8 years before I set up a boutique corporate finance operation in London in 2013. And then earlier this year, I joined a team of entrepreneurs to set up a new accountancy and advisory firm called Fortus Business Advisors, which was launched on April Fool's Day in the middle of the pandemic, which was perfect timing for any such venture.
Mr. Standish, you started that business in this COVID situation. Can you tell us a bit about how you did that and how the COVID situation impacted you starting your business?
Yes, certainly, Abdullah. It was, in many ways, it wasn't ideal timing, but it was a project that had been nearly 2 years in the planning. I was working with a group of like-minded individuals who were involved in accountancy, but wanted to bring a new type of advisory offering to the owner-managed business market. So very much the breadth of services that people enjoy from the big four accounting firms, or maybe the big consulting firms. When you're a smaller business, you don't have access to those. So our dream was to bring that breadth of offering and that expertise to the smaller business owner. So we started in the planning, I say about 2 years ago. We then needed to set a launch date, which we did about 12 months before the pandemic erupted. So unfortunately, at that point, we had to go live. We had our emails set up. We had our insurances all set. We had the staff secured and a number of clients that were going to join us in our venture. The pandemic came, but we weren't able to change our plans because we had to launch forth. As it happened, we've been pretty fortunate in that the pandemic, whilst it's brought a lot of challenges to an awful lot of business people, that has brought quite a lot of work into the advisory world. So we've managed to both survive and indeed prosper through these very challenging times.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So now that we have a good idea about what you do and a little more about you, based on those experiences, how did you first brainstorm ideas to start your startup?
It started in probably the best possible fashion on the balcony of a hotel overlooking Trafalgar Square in London with about half a dozen colleagues, all of whom had a similar mindset. And so we started to brainstorm what a business would look like. We were all involved in the advisory world. We were involved in accounting and providing advisory services at that time. We recognized the gap in the market that we wanted to fill. So we then met fairly regularly as a group outside of our working hours just to begin to pull together the plan that we wanted to do, exploring each other's experiences, exploring each other's points of view, and then beginning to build a business plan from that base. We've been quite fortunate, Abdullah, that part of our day job, if you like, has been helping entrepreneurs with their business plans. And so we had a variety of tools and templates which were very useful for that. And we tended to follow some of the work that we help other businesses follow. But it's interesting, quite often the teacher is a bad learner. And so we had a lot of experiences where we had to remind ourselves that we were having to walk the walk as well as talking the talk. But a lot of it is basically making sure you've got an offering that is appropriate for the market that you want to deliver into, costing it out properly and being realistic about your expectations of revenue, and then building a robust financial model that supports your ideas.
Thank you so much. So you've been talking a lot about like filling in that market gap. So what is market analysis and how should someone approach it?
That's a really good question, Ria. I think very often people forget to step back and look at the wider aspects of a market. And what we were very fortunate with were the six of us who brainstormed the particular new venture came from very different types of perspective. So we had people who came from an HR perspective. We had a guy who came from a PR and marketing background. We had an auditor. We had a corporate financier. We had a tax specialist. And all of these people see the market very differently. But then we're able to talk to their clients about what they needed. And so we almost were able to do our own market research with very different points of view and very different aspects in the way in which the questions were couched. And when we came back and brought the data back to one place, it was really interesting to see what was important to different clients when they were being asked different sorts of questions by different advisors. So someone who specializes in PR and marketing was much more interested in the soft side of customer service and delivery and presentation and brand importance, whereas somebody from the auditing side is much more conscious about value for money and price of delivery and cost comparisons with competitors. And so we were able to get a melange of those ideas, which hopefully gave us an idea of how to attack a market, but also not overlooking the fact that the soft side of presentation and the soft side of delivery is as important as sometimes the hard numbers are.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I really agree with that. So my next question is, what is customer analysis, and what questions are the most important to ask potential customers?
In its sort of its basic form, it's really just contacting people and talking through questionnaires with them, Abdullah. So very often it's finding people who are willing to take the time to speak to you, and that's often the hardest part because a lot of customers are very busy people, and surveys are the sort of thing that they generally run a mile from. So a lot of companies now incentivize people to take part in surveys by rewarding the time that people are sacrificing for it. But we were fortunate that the people who came together here had their own businesses anyway, and they had clients who were almost confidants that they felt they could talk to conversationally and actually undertake that research. And so we were able to get probably far more genuine responses than you get when you have to go out cold to a customer base with questionnaires or employ third-party people to do it for you.
Yeah, that's great. Can you provide an example of how customer analysis helped you with your startup?
Yeah, of course, Ria. What we were very interested in was what people's perception was of accountants. And we found that in many cases, a lot of small businesses didn't trust their accountants as much as we hoped they would. I think they saw them as a bit of an extension of the IRS or the Inland Revenue, as we call them in the UK. And in those cases, information is sometimes withheld. They don't share the full picture. And because accountants only provided a very limited service in terms of the offering to a business owner, it became clear that if we could offer more services and we could help them with more of their business problems, the trust would be built over a much broader spectrum and would be a much deeper bond. And so that's how the analysis helped, that when we were talking to people about what sort of advice they found important in their business, we realized that we needed to add some service lines and some delivery options, so that rather than just providing a set of numbers or helping people with their tax returns, they also wanted some help with maybe their people problems. Maybe they wanted some help with some of their property issues. So we built a team that included property experts to help people move premises, to negotiate leases with landlords, to deal with dilapidations. We've got people to help with the recruitment of staff and to help put employment contracts in place. And a lot of that was driven from the research that we undertook to see where it was that people needed their help most.
Thank you, Mr. Standish. Really interesting. Now, to conclude, I want to know, in your opinion, what qualities do entrepreneurs who succeed have?
Another good question, Abdullah, because sadly, entrepreneurship is a risky business, and many entrepreneurs do fail. But a lot of successful entrepreneurs manage to pick themselves up and go again because they have determination, they have resilience, they have optimism, but without being ridiculously optimistic. I think a positive approach is essential because there are so many knocks for an entrepreneur. If you're easily discouraged, then probably entrepreneurial business is not for you. You'll get a great order one day, it'll be cancelled the next. You'll have a big order cancelled after that. You'll get a parking fine when you're at your biggest customer's premises, and all sorts of things come your way. And in many cases, we see entrepreneurs who struggle very much in the early stages to get their business going. But if you can get through those difficult challenges, it actually prepares you very well for later business life, because the challenges that a new entrepreneur has with limited cash, very little professional support in that situation, if you can battle through those stages, you're very well prepared to take a business to another level. Unfortunately, a lot of people get discouraged in the early stages. So what I would suggest is just remember that after a bad day, there's usually a good day, but you have to be around to take advantage of it.